What to do, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the reissue of Jay-Z's Blueprint 2, The Gift and the Curse album. Basically, this album is called the Blueprint 2.1. It came out in the spring of 2003. And basically, the thing about it was there were some complaints about Jay-Z's double album, The Blueprint 2. And basically, that they had said that there were just too many cuts on there. They had said that there were too many cuts on there, and Jay Z did not wholesomely pull off the concept of a double album like his contemporaries, like Biggie and Tupac, and some of them. Basically, what Jay Z did is he compacted some of this, took either his favorites or the most acclaimed songs, and put them in a 14-song package, and basically trimmed about 10 or 12 songs on here. Now, really, that's kind of the concept about it. Now, the unfortunate thing about this album, the Blueprint 2.1, is apart from like one new song, which is also to be found on the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack, there is not much incentive to really getting this project because there are two bonus songs on here, but the second song, Stop, is pretty cruddy and just overall not a good rendition of a solo Jay-Z song at all. It's probably one of the more terrible produced songs I've heard by Jay-Z, but for the most part, the problem I have with this album is just the fact that the popular songs or the songs that I enjoyed the most from the Blueprint to The Gift and the Curse are just not on here. Now there's some of them, but it's very light. Like I feel like Jay-Z had a pretty commercial gloss on the original The Blueprint 2. Songs like The Bounce, Nigga Please, Poppin' Tags, some of those type moments, especially the things that he did with Pharrell Williams. I'm just going to go through some of these to see you remember. There's Fuck All Night. That was a good one. And Excuse Me Miss and Hovey Baby. I mean, there just was some real commercial gloss on here that I want to say that there was even a few other ones like Diamond Is Forever and some of those type ones. There just was really, I might even say that Too Many Hoes might have been one. I don't remember if I liked that one, but I reviewed this album back in early 2021. I remember saying that it was a pretty solid job of like a double album, but there just were a handful of songs. And the problem with it is a lot of those songs that I didn't like on the Blueprint 2 back in 2021 are the songs that appeared on this Blueprint 2.1 compilation project. And that's really kind of a disappointment because I feel like some of these, just to kind of talk about it, like some of these, Guns N' Roses, You Don't Know remix, Meet the Parents, some more of these All Around the World, What They Gonna Do Part 2. I mean, a lot of these were not the most acclaimed kind of moments. I think what I would have chosen for some of these and something that would have been a more stellar kind of rendition would have been to have gotten more songs. I definitely was disappointed that Poppin' Tags wasn't on here. That just needed to be. And I also kind of feel like some of the Neptunes kind of beats, like Pharrell is really not on here that much, which is kind of a disappointment. I mean, he does produce the single. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the single, and then we'll get to the complaints of this project. So the single was La La La, Excuse Me, Miss Again. Really pulsating and just head pounding kind of club song. This is an excellent song. This is the sort of stuff that I wanted to see Jay-Z on, especially circa 2003. And this is the sort of stuff that was not really on the original Blueprint, and this is like the most litty track of pretty much most of Jay-Z's stuff of the early 2000s. This is Jay-Z in a very riveting tone, a very contemporary tone, and a very lively tone as well. This is just something that was just unlike most of Jay-Z's catalog, and it's just surprising that this one just kind of came out of nowhere. It's just very sleek, very stylish, and just has a lot of overall gloss that just needed something more often. Like Pharrell did fantastic with the production, and he even assisted adding some ad libs and background vocals to the song to assist Jay-Z like he usually does. That's just another quality hit from Jay-Z and Pharrell and stuff. And it's just an overall great single, and it's just I would have to look it up to see how well this song charted, but I would definitely say that this is the definite highlight, especially for 2000s Jay-Z. It just has a lot of quality. But it is, to talk about the rest of the album now, it's just kind of a colossal disappointment that a lot of the bounce and the more glossy moments, because I feel like the Blueprint 2 was kind of a slash between like contemporary Jay-Z with stuff like '03 Bonnie and Clyde, Excuse Me Miss, and Hovey Baby. And then it also had some soulful stuff on here like Somehow, Some Way, and Some People Hate, and some of those type records that just kind of had more of that kind of vibe, and also like A Dream with Faith Evans and Biggie and that type stuff. So it just kind of had like some of those particular moments. But the disappointing thing about it was, the blueprint, the original blueprint is better than this album, the Blueprint 2.1. But I'd probably say I like a lot of the stuff on the original Blueprint 2 that just is not on here. That just really kind of happens to be a thing. I mean, what they were aiming for was a compact record to try to nullify the complaints of the original double album, but it just doesn't pull it off because for some reason the taste selection that they tried to portray. I mean, I just don't understand why when you try to throw together 14 Jay-Z songs, you don't have the emphasis of being able to figure out what those best moments kind of are. And this was kind of strange. I may be kind of viewing this as opinionated, but I really feel like some of these just were not the more choice kind of renditions. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about my songs I recommend, and then we'll get to the further critique of this album. So the 6 songs out of 14 I recommend to you would be A Dream, which has Faith Evans and Biggie on a posthumous verse. Excuse Me, Miss, which was produced by Pharrell. That was a single off the original Blueprint 2. The Bounce, which has Kanye West on there. '03 Bonnie and Clyde, which was a single on Blueprint 2 with Beyonce. La La La, which is the new song on there that has Pharrell and background help and that type of stuff. And then Hovey Baby, which was another single off the Blueprint 2. So that's basically it. The 3 singles off the Blueprint 2, and then A Dream, a Dream, The Bounce, and the new song La La La. There's not an overabundance to really talk about on this project. I would definitely have to say some of the songs I would have recommended that be on here. I definitely feel like Some People Hate was a better soulful song than the one we got. I feel like Diamond Is Forever was definitely like a really kind of sprawling and just brooding and kind of bruised, kind of pulsating beat that should have been on there. Blueprint 2, the title track, was a really kind of, that sample on that song was really great. It just was very kind of powerful and sophisticated, very blue blood, and I like the pace of that. Nigga Please was an excellent Pharrell beat, and Pharrell just really tore apart that song with his background help that he did with Jay-Z on there. He just helped overall in that song. A Ballad for the Fallen Soldier was a pretty good one also. That was another one that Pharrell really helped out with. Just basically anything off the Blueprint 2 I would have chosen over the songs that happened. Fuck All Night was a nice kind of contemporary kind of nightclub bop that just was very lacking on here. Poppin' Tags was a great kind of suave and sophisticated ladies cut that was just about being rich and stuff. And I'm trying to think of a few more of these. Yeah, I would say 7 different songs that I probably would have chosen as opposed to the ones that we wound up getting. And that just kind of happened to be the concept comparatively towards it, where really the You Don't Know remix didn't really contribute to much because it just was the same beat that it was on the original Blueprint album. I don't know who MOP was, but it didn't have much of a contribution. I really felt like the Guns N' Roses song didn't really fit. Jay-Z doesn't really seem that convincing on rock rap. I feel like all around the world was kind of like a really kind of supposed to be sprawling and kind of global kind of song for travel and that type of stuff, but it just wasn't as emphatic as songs like Poppin' Tags and like Diamond Is Forever and some of those type ones. Like Meet the Parents was just kind of a very dull beat and just didn't have very compelling type feel about it. I didn't really see the concept. I mean, this one was definitely a filler song on the original Blueprint too. Somehow, some way, I remember saying I liked that song on the original Blueprint 2 review that I did back in 2021, but it just doesn't carry over quite as well just because I listened to the lyrics more and it just really feels like a gotta get up out the struggle kind of song. It's not quite as good as like Some People Hate or Blueprint 2, the title track. One of those should have been on there, especially considering that this is called the Blueprint 2. It just should have been on there. Now, the Blueprint 2 is a bonus track on the European version, but it should have been just on the standard track listing. And like What They Gonna Do Part 2 just has a really kind of jittery and kind of almost ghostly beat, but it just doesn't really fit the sound that Jay-Z should have had for here. So this album really loses the compactness of the overall presentation that the full Blueprint 2 album kind of had. And it just kind of comes off as a hodgepodge of trying to pick the best moments that doesn't really equal what should have been on here. And I just feel like the components for trying to signify some of Jay-Z's best moments just was not actually aping the concept of doing it. That just really happens to be the problem. I mean, you listen to some of the stuff like emphatic stuff like Poppin' Tags, and some people hate Nigga Please and some of those. This album severely lacks contemporary and kind of aims for like more kind of lyrical and thought-provoking topics, but it really downplays it just because it doesn't round out the album because it's not compelling enough to really venture into. And I feel like the situation when there's only 12 or 13 or 14 songs, you have to have the heavy hitters up front. And when there's just only like so many moments on there, it just doesn't really allow for that to kind of happen. So it's just kind of the situation about it. I definitely would have said that some more favorite songs. I mean, it should be not that difficult to come up with 12 hit Jay-Z songs. I mean, really, considering all the stuff that he's done and how heralded a lyricist he kind of is, like just naming like several of these, like Fuck All Night, Poppin' Tags, Diamond is Forever, Blueprint 2, and Nigga Please, and that definitely would have rounded out this project and probably brought the grand total of hits off this project. Me liking 6 already, plus another 5 would have been 11 out of 14. Not saying that I had to like every single song, but definitely liking 11 out of 14. I would have probably given this album a pretty goddamn rave score. So I just would have to say that would have been the thing. But for what it is, me liking basically 6 songs out of 14, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 4 out of 10. I feel like that's about as much as I can do with it just because it does have some hits on here, but apart from La La La, which is definitely far and away the best moment on this project, it just basically you're better off just getting the Blueprint 2. I mean, that just has a better consolidation, just paying like the extra $5 or $6 for another 8, 9, or 10 more songs. Really, this is a worse rendition of the original Blueprint 2, and the only real incentive to get this album apart from a worse rendition of the original track listing is just La La La, which you can basically find on the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack, and that's probably a better album than this album. So I just would have to say, just basically get Bad Boys 2 soundtrack. I mean, if absolutely necessary, I would get this, but La 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 is the best moment. And for the most part, this is just a pretty cruddy kind of, yeah, basically La 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 is the best moment. Excuse Me, Miss Again is the best moment. And apart from that, this is a pretty cruddy rendition of like a track listing of what to do with the Jay-Z album. But the Blueprint 2 is nothing to sneeze at. So don't go in thinking that that's a piece of crap album because it definitely has some good stuff on here. People say it's bloated and it's overstuffed, but I see it as a pretty solid rendition. Definitely one of the better rap double albums. I think people say sometimes that not many people can pull it off. I think Jay-Z did a pretty valiant effort of doing it. So it's not to be overlooked in that context. But the social score, I'm going to give the social score like a 3.5 out of 10, just because I really feel like there are some moments on here but A Dream with Biggie is really not terribly social. So I feel like Excuse Me, Miss, which is kind of a more romanticized kind of flirt song. Basically, the songs I would play around your buddies and stuff would just be The Bounce, Hovey Baby, and La La La, Excuse Me, Miss Again. That's really about it. There's a couple songs for the ladies and just a kind of introspective kind of song. But apart from that, it's just very trite and kind of trim. But I do feel like, I mean, Jay-Z's lyrics, I will say, are off the meter. He definitely has some pretty stellar lyrics on here and does manage to be compelling in terms of what he says. But this is the concept of just the execution of panning out songs and depicting to people what is interesting. Jay-Z was just very poor. So that's just kind of the concept about it. But in terms of the future, like Jay-Z has put out an album, like he put out an album in 2018 with Beyonce, and that's really the last thing I can remember him doing. He might have done some more stuff, but I'm not sure, but I am going to start getting to some more of these as time goes along. So